We're very glad to have you. We have an amazing group of 26 fellows from 24 countries. You all are joining our Global Fellowship Program, which has been our flagship since we were founded in 1953 as a gift to President Eisenhower. We think you all will find this to be a very transformative and catalyzing experience for the impact you're having in the world. And it also introduces you and welcomes you into a historic group of fellows and who are really leaders all around the globe. Just so housekeeping, as I said, please mute yourselves for chat and questions. Include them in the chat box. We'll get to them at the end. Okay. So I'd like to introduce our programs team. I don't want to run through everyone, but I do want to direct you to Erin Hellman, our vice president, who is on the webinar today. You can take a look at our website and see our bios. We're all very excited to meet you in Philadelphia the first week of April. So with that, I'll hand off to Erin.
Thank you, Jake. Hi, my name is Erin Hillman. I'm the Vice President of Programs and Operations at Eisenhower Fellowships in Philadelphia. I joined Eisenhower Fellowships in the year 2000 as an International Program Officer. You can see all of you have been in touch with your program officers, and they're absolutely delighted to work with you. As a former program officer, I encourage you to really trust your program officers. They will be your guide for your 7 weeks of Eisenhower Fellowship in the United States. And they work with 5 fellows and will provide you with the kinds of meetings that you need to help build your project. And so I speak on behalf of all the staff and the Board of Trustees when I say we're absolutely delighted to welcome you in Philadelphia when you come in April. Just a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I was an international program officer. I also worked on our USA programs. And now as vice president, I'm responsible for our finance and administration, our global network, and our programs, which comprise of about 70 fellows that we either send abroad as US fellows or are inbound as international fellows like all of you. So let me just go over some of the things that we're going to discuss today in our webinar, just a few key discussion topics that we're going to cover. If Lauren can just advance the slide. Basically, I'm going to give you a broad overview of your 7-week journey. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about how to prepare in advance of your fellowship journey. That part is really quite important, so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about how you can get ready. We'll also give you an overview on your first week in Philadelphia. We call it the opening seminar. And we'll touch on the individual travel period, which is comprised of travel to 2 to 3 cities per week and 2 to 3 meetings per day. And then we'll also discuss the project component and the closing seminar and the post-fellowship experience. So that's just a broad overview of some of the topics that we're going to cover in the next 30 minutes or so. The next slide just gives you a nice little timeline of what your experience will be like starting in early April with the opening seminar. And we'll dive in a little bit more on the opening seminar in the next slides, but here you have the travel period. We have the opening and closing seminar, which is the bookends to your 5 weeks of travel. So I'll just pause for a minute so you can take a look at this slide so you can see just a general outline of what your fellowship experience will be like. And just so you know, you can take note of your questions. As we go through the webinar, you can enter them into the chat box, or you can have a chance to ask us direct questions at the end of this webinar. So please take note of any questions that you might have as we go through this. We hope you have lots of questions to ask us. And then just another point that I'm just going to make in general is that, based on the feedback I've received from fellows over the years, there's some common themes that I've heard. And, fellows later appreciate being encouraged to visit fewer cities, to spend more time with their counterparts as opposed to being on travel and in airports. Fellows have been struck by the insights gained from a diversity of experiences, visiting small, large cities, different parts of the United States, from meeting with people from different walks of life that might not share the same views as you. So I just think overall, that's just one piece of advice I'd like to share. And following along with that, let's focus a little bit on how you should be preparing right now for your fellowship, because I'm sure that's all top of mind for all of you that have joined us on the webinar. How can I get the most out of this experience? You're going to be leaving your colleagues at work, your families at home. So obviously you want to leverage this experience as much as possible. But in order to do that, you really do need to prepare in advance. I know you're all extremely busy people because you're Eisenhower Fellows, and that's why we selected you. But you really do need to, I can't emphasize enough the need to prepare now for the experience you're about to have. The more you prepare now, the better your experience is going to be. Your program officers, as I said in the beginning, are absolutely wonderful, but only you really know the kinds of people that you would like to meet that will help you in your home country implement your project and maximize your impact. So with that said, the time is now. The time is now to talk to as many people as you can about who, if they had the chance to be in the United States for 5 weeks of meetings, who would they want to meet with? Who can connect you to whom? Work with your USA Fellow mentor. By now, all of you should have a mentor that you're working with, a USA Fellow. This is a new initiative that we're launching as a pilot, this program, to help connect you to one of our USA Fellows who will help you shape your project, open doors for you, and just be a general resource to you. So this is one of the many tools that we have here, but we really will rely on you to really engage with us, engage with your program officer, talk to him or her on the telephone, through Skype, network as much as possible, and really own your fellowship experience. Because the more you do that now, the better your experience will be. So here's just a few bullet points about different ways you can prepare. And then the one thing that you'll see once you arrive in the United States, you have the gift of 25 outstanding leaders who will become your very close friends. And as valuable as the fellowship experience itself will be, as transformative as that will be, one of the greatest gifts will be the opportunity to engage with your cohort. And you'll learn a great deal from them as well. So you can see that this is the time to do that. And then when you arrive in Philadelphia in April for the opening seminar, you'll get a chance to meet your class. You'll also get a chance to meet the USA Fellows, which we'll go into in a few minutes. The goals of the opening seminar is to learn about Eisenhower Fellowships and our mission. It's to get to know the staff and the team here in Philadelphia. It's an opportunity to further crystallize your project objectives and confirm your program with your program officer. So those are some of the goals. We will be sending you a schedule very shortly on the opening seminar. We have a great week prepared for you, and you're just going to get a lot out of that time here in Philadelphia. So as I mentioned, US Fellows will be joining you. We have 11 USA Fellows that we're sending as part of our US program. We select about 10 to 12 US Fellows every year. They go to 1 to 2 countries. This group, unlike you, does not travel with a cohort. So they travel mostly by themselves. So this is an opportunity for them to engage with international fellows. You'll find them a terrific resource in which you can, have really candid discussions with them and test your assumptions. You'll find that they're very willing and eager to engage with you. And we also hope that if they travel to your country, that you, once you return after your fellowship, that you will also be a resource to them when they travel internationally. Their bios are currently up on our website. So if you'd like to learn more about the 2018 Zhurxing Fellows, simply you'll meet them when you're here in Philadelphia. We have another program which we send U.S. leaders to China. This is cohort that you see here on the screen. That's the 2018 Zhurxing China Eisenhower Fellows. This is a partnership that we launched in 2015, and this is the 4th group of Eisenhower Fellows that are traveling to China. They leave for the month of June. Unlike the first slide, fellows, they travel as a group. And this partnership was forged actually through an Eisenhower Fellow who was the Minister of Education at the time and came to us for this partnership with the China Education Association for International Exchange. So this group of fellows will also be with you in Philadelphia during the opening week. So I'm sure you've heard enough from me already. I'm going to turn it back to Jake, and he'll provide some more details on what to expect during the fellowship and how to make the most of it. Over to you, Jake.
Good, thank you, Erin. So obviously the number one thing you're focused on is your project, your impact when you return home. You know, how is this experience going to transform you, transform your work, inform your work? And it consists of 2 to 3 meetings a day of people that will inform your work, your impact, and who can serve as potential collaborators. Most meetings will be individual meetings. You should always also use them as opportunities for introductions to others in that person's network. Often those networks are much more powerful than anything that you can find on your own. And also think about ways that you can maintain relationships with those people for future potential collaborations. You will also have some joint appointments. There are a good number of individuals that other fellows are very interested in as well, because many of you may have overlapping interests. And the joint appointments are a way of respecting the time of the person you're meeting with. And in those meetings, you should think about connecting with the fellow who you're joining with in advance, planning how you will divide the time and share the conversation. There are also a number of group activities, some with trustees, sponsors, friends of EF, with USA fellows. These are good opportunities to network, to meet people who are very interested in what you are doing, and who also have very strong, big networks that you might be able to access. And one other point is it's also important to consider the fact that everyone you're meeting with is really just doing this voluntarily and out of their own kindness. In most cases, they're getting a lot of benefit from meeting with you because you are amazing people, and they're often interested in the work you're doing at home or have relationships with the countries you're in. But in other cases, it's really just they're interested in talking to you and informing you of what they do. So it's always important to send thank you notes and show your gratitude to these folks. It's also, as Erin noted, it's very important to prepare. And that means not just preparing for the overall outline of the project, but on a day-to-day basis, day-to-day meetings. Always know what the name of the person is that you're meeting, what they do, what their background is. I know that sounds obvious, but often after 30 meetings in a short period of days, they can blur together and you get a bit tired. But it's important to plan who you're meeting, and also plan how to document meeting takeaways, however you want. Some folks do notes during the meeting, some folks write it immediately after. We've had people prepare PowerPoint slides for each meeting. It's really whatever works for you. And given how much travel you'll be doing and how big a component of your life getting to airports and getting on taxis will be prepared by mapping things out a day in advance. Look at public transportation. That's your friend. And in a lot of cities, the subway can be faster than cars, which may not be immediately obvious. And also expect the unexpected with the meetings. You know, some people will treat you like family. You know, they'll invite you to their home. They'll introduce you to all their friends. And a small number of people will not be prepared and maybe a little bit disappointing. But that's just the way, you know, the world is. Obviously, I think that's going to be the much smaller number, but it's just important to be aware of that and be flexible. If there are cancellations, if people need to meet you on the other side of town, just know that it's all very dynamic. Other notes, we have a no cancellations policy. So once you've committed, It's pretty much at all cost, other than sickness and things. We need you to get to those meetings. Business dress, generally for meetings. It varies a little bit by Silicon Valley versus New York, but in general, it's always easier to stick with business, and then you also have to have a smaller wardrobe that you have to pack with you. And on that note, pack light. No one really knows, other than you, if you're wearing the same thing every day. Last, try to stay engaged at home and with the network on social media. Our hashtag is EFJourney, which will get ingrained to you during the opening seminar. And I would also take this opportunity to get on LinkedIn, connect with fellows, indicate that you are an Eisenhower Fellow on LinkedIn. And a last point on dress, if it's something that's relevant for you, we'd encourage national dress. It's a fun way of showing the international aspect of Eisenhower Fellowships at the big closing events that Aaron will talk about later. So next, I'll talk about the mid-program retreat. This is something that we do every year. And every year, the fellows universally say this was an incredibly helpful event. Not only is it fun, it's a really good chance to kind of disconnect from the travel you've been doing, reconnect with the fellow fellows, think about what you've learned, get advice from your fellow fellows on what they've learned. They've all been around the country like you have, meeting some of America's best minds. So this will give you a chance to reflect, adjust your project. Maybe some of the assumptions you had at the beginning were not quite right, and you've learned some new things that force you to, really rethink what your approach is. And I do also want to say that it's quite fun. It's a beautiful part of the country, great weather. The Grand Canyon is obviously one of the world's most beautiful places. So with that, I'll hand back to Aaron, who will discuss some of the special events that will be concluding this year's program.
Thanks, Jake. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, your 5 weeks of travel will be bookended with an opening seminar at the start of your program to help you prepare. And then we will end with a closing seminar, which will help wrap up your project. One of the things we will have as part of the opening and closing seminars is one of our USA fellows is an expert in storytelling, and he'll spend some time with you to help coach you on how to tell your fellowship story. So at the end of the program in Philadelphia, when you return, you'll have an opportunity to share your story with the other fellows who are participating in the closing seminar. You'll also have to finalize your project report. We often encourage fellows to start thinking about that in the beautiful environment of the mid-program retreat. You can begin it then and then finalize the project report when you return to Philadelphia and submit that to us on your return. There'll be other deliverables that we'll ask you for as you travel. One will be every week we have something called Reports from the Road. You'll get a survey from us, and it's really short, 3 quick questions. It just helps us make sure that we're always continuously improving our programs. And so we ask you, despite your busy schedule while on fellowship, that you fill that out and return that to us. But really, let's get to the exciting part. You're coming at a very fortuitous time in Eisenhower Fellowship's history. For the past 12 years, General Colin Powell has been the chairman of Eisenhower Fellowships, and he's really been a remarkable leader for our organization. He, after 12 years of service, has signaled that he needs to retire from the board, and so we're going to honor him on May 16th. We'll have a big gala dinner at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia with our Board of Trustees and special guests. Of course, you'll be invited to attend that dinner with us, so you'll get to witness a little bit of Eisenhower Fellowship's history. The following day is we have an annual meeting at every May at the end of our global spring program. Our Board of Trustees comes for our in-person board meeting of the year, and that evening we'll welcome our new EF chairman, former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates. So this will be his first meeting with us in Philadelphia. And as you might imagine, the entire Eisenhower Fellowship community is very excited to welcome him as our new chair. We will also have a number of former fellows who will come into town to join in this two-day celebration. So we're busy preparing for that, and you're very fortunate because you just get to come and enjoy it. But it will be a great way, it'll be a capstone for your fellowship experience before you depart back home the following day. And then once May 17th happens, you're part of our network. And it may be hard to imagine, but as transformative as your EF journey will be, fellows continually say that the network is really what distinguishes Eisenhower Fellowships as an organization. You'll become part of a group of over 1,600 leaders across the globe who are actively engaged with making the world more just, prosperous, and peaceful. And you will have access to all of these decision makers and leaders in our network. So, you know, it really will be up to you and how much you actually use the network and gain value from it. But it's a tremendous resource. And what you'll find is with the key to the network, you have access to leaders across the globe that will trust you and help you in all the work that you do. So that's a very exciting component of the fellowship that awaits you. You not only have access to your country network, many of you perhaps have met fellows in your home countries, but you'll also have access to the network across the globe. You'll have a very tight circle of fellows in your cohort as well. So the network is what you will make of it, but I think you will find that it's an absolute fascinating and important tool that you'll have for the rest of your life. And that's how your fellowship will continue once you've finished your EF journey. So, you know, we'll talk a little bit more when you're in Philadelphia about ways that you can engage with the network, some really concrete ways that you can participate with us. But we will have more time to talk about that once you arrive in Philadelphia. So in interest of your time, we're coming to the end of our 30 minutes with you today. We wanted to give some time for questions. So if you at this time have questions that you would either like to ask us here on the webinar or type into the chat box, either way is acceptable depending on your comfort level. These aren't questions specific to your fellowship, but more general questions that would be of interest to the wider audience. So if you would like at this time, we welcome your questions. Somebody has to have a question.
Oh, everything is very clear, so.
I can't imagine that this is a shy group of Eisenhower Fellows. It's never happened. We've never had a shy group. So I'm sure somebody would like to, does that want to make a comment or ask a question?
Maybe the program officers have just been informing folks just so well ahead of time. I don't know.
Okay, so I see there's a question from Adrian about social media. So Kelly, what is our tag on LinkedIn?
I think Kelly's mic is not working, so I just
okay.
put it in the chat box. The social media tag is hashtag EF Journey. For LinkedIn specifically.
We also have a group.
Sorry?
Yes. We have a group on LinkedIn. We have an Eisenhower Fellowships group on LinkedIn, which you can request to join, as well as an Eisenhower Fellowship group on Facebook.
And I think your program officer will be able to, send you an email with more detailed instructions if it's not immediately apparent.
I know too that we wanted to start a WhatsApp group as well. So I think we might be coordinating. You might have heard a request to get your numbers for WhatsApp ID, so you can start talking to one another as a group. Okay, well, in the interest of everyone's time, if there aren't any more questions, go ahead.
Can I ask something? I'm Gracia here from
Of
Chile. Hello, everybody, and thank you for everything. I think it's really clear what you have been saying. Can I ask if, for example, in the meetings there in the United States, people from there expect that you bring something for them? You just have to arrive?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question, a question about gifts. And this is a really common question. I would say no, it is not expected in the United States that you give gifts for all your meetings. You have far too many meetings. You would need 6 extra suitcases for all the gifts if you were to expect that. But what I would say is I would wrap, and the other program officers might have suggestions on this, but I always advise fellows to wrap about a dozen small gifts that are local to your country that you save for people that go out of their way. So maybe someone hosts you in their house for dinner, or someone spends their Saturday giving you a tour around the city. So for the individuals that really have made extraordinary efforts to host you well, then maybe perhaps for your mentor, if your mentor you feel is very active in helping you with your fellowship, you might want to have about a dozen gifts that you have in those cases where someone really goes out of their way to help you. The other thing I would say to have prepared with you before you in terms of packing, I would have a presentation, a slide presentation about you and your work ready. You may find that you think that you're just going to a meeting at a university, and the next thing you know, you're being asked at noon to give a lunchtime presentation. So I think that it's wise to have a short slideshow that you would have on a flash drive if you're asked to give a presentation. Oftentimes you will know this in advance and you could customize it, but just to have the basic framework of a presentation ready that you could modify is something that's very helpful.
And
okay,
one other note,
thank you very much. One
other note on packing. Keep in mind you can send things home or buy luggage on the way, so that if you find that you have too much with you when you arrive, you can also maybe drop a small bag in Philadelphia.
Any other questions? And just so you know, we're recording this webinar and we will send it out to all the fellows. So if you've arrived late and you didn't catch the entire presentation, you'll have the opportunity to listen to it later at a time that's convenient for you.
Aaron, there's one more question from Hua Feng on dress for meetings. He asked if it's required to do formal dress for meetings or if business casual is fine.
I think it depends on the situation. I think that if you're meeting, for example, in New York City with one of our trustees, one of our members of the board of trustees, I would recommend that business dress would be more appropriate. For example, Silicon Valley and some of your meetings in the middle of the United States or in the South, I think business casual would be appropriate. Your program officer in general, I think, will be able to advise you when business dress would be more appropriate. For example, if you're meeting Susan Eisenhower, the granddaughter of President Eisenhower, in her offices in Washington, D.C., I would recommend that you would wear business dress to a meeting like that. So it really will depend on the situation. If you're going to a nonprofit grassroots organization that works with children, then business casual would be completely appropriate. So your program officer will be your guide on that if you have any questions on dress. But I would bring both so you're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, is there a good time for national dress?
There is a good time for national dress, and the good time for that would be at one or both of the closing dinners on May 16th and 17th at the end of your program. And there will also be a lot of opportunities for photographs with our new chairman, Secretary Gates, at that final dinner. So you might want to have national dress for that dinner so you have a special photo to bring back home as a memory of your fellowship. Ladies and gentlemen, we're so delighted that you will be joining us in April. This is an extraordinary group of leaders, as Jake mentioned, 26 leaders from 24 different countries, from all walks of life, all committed to Eisenhower Fellowship's vision. We guarantee that this experience is going to be absolutely transformative to you, and we're delighted to welcome you into the Eisenhower Fellowship family. So with that, we'll close the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. See you soon.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Looking forward.
Bye.